For over 2 decades, Top Gun sat at the pinnacle of fighter aviation. Immortalized by the Hollywood film in 1987, its pilots were respected as the best of the best, an elite within an already elite community of naval aviators. Top Gun coordinated and standardized all adversary training and doctrine for the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps. Only the best aircrew were sent to learn how to exploit fully the capabilities of their fighters and to practice the art of dogfighting. They also learned how to impart these skills to fellow squadron pilots after graduating from the intensive course. Like the Air Force's Red Flag series of exercises, Top Gun was developed as a result of the relatively poor showing made by American pilots in the skies over North Vietnam. Unlike Red Flag, however, the Navy's version was up and running in time for its first graduates to prove how effective they could be in combat over Southeast Asia. During air combat over Korea, U.S. fighters established an impressive dominance over communist MiG-15s, achieving an overall kill-to-loss ratio of over 6-to-1. But this highly favorable situation changed dramatically in Vietnam. Here, U.S. fighter pilots met supposedly inferior MiGs in air combat and too often found themselves on the losing side. Before the bombing halt in 1968, the kill-loss ratio stood at about parity. In other words, just as many Vietnamese MiGs were being shot down as U.S. fighters. At 6-to-1, the Navy's gun-equipped Crusader had the most successful kill ratio of any U.S. fighter. The F-4 Phantom was faster and more powerful than its MiG opposition, but significantly, it lacked a gun. Moreover, poor tactics and rules of engagement meant the Phantom pilots were forced into battle on equal terms and never established Korean-style domination. In 1969, the U.S. Navy set about rectifying this situation by creating a special school for its fighter pilots to teach them advanced techniques in air combat maneuvering. Top Gun arose from a report produced by World War II veteran Captain Frank Ault. Returning after a combat cruise commanding the carrier USS Coral Sea, he made a wide-ranging assessment of just why American fighters were doing so poorly over Vietnam. The Ault report looked at everything to do with combat: weapons, systems, aircraft, and pilot performance and training. Much of the problem was due to unreliable radar and poor missiles. The medium-range Sparrow had been designed to shoot down non-maneuvering Soviet bombers rather than hard-turning MiGs. But just as much was due to the fact that Phantom pilots had little experience of dogfighting. The Ault report's formal recommendations included the establishment of a fighter school, a graduate course in air combat tactics. It would take a small number of the best personnel from fleet and marine fighter units and instruct them in the weapons and tactics needed to prevail over an enemy with smaller, less powerful, but more nimble aircraft. These pilots would then return to their units where they would become instructors in ACM, air combat maneuvering. headed by Lieutenant Commander Dan Peterson, the Navy Fighter Weapons School established a grueling 4-week course beginning in March 1969, which incorporated both flying and classroom work. A major part of the syllabus comprised dissimilar ACM training, exercising against aircraft with different flying and fighting characteristics. Air crews were taught how to exploit fully the capabilities of the two-seat missile-armed Phantom. Top Gun instructors used Skyhawks to simulate the MiG-17, but their pupils also fought against Navy Crusaders and Air Force Delta Dart interceptors, which replicated the supersonic MiG-21. The training could not have been more timely. Far from the skies of California, the air war in Vietnam was heating up once more. By January 1972, 21 classes, each with between 6 and 8 fighter crews, had graduated from the now well-established Top Gun school. These graduates returned to Vietnam and soon showed just how effective their training had been. Top Gun had transformed the combat capability of the Phantom. The school became acknowledged as the leader in F-4 tactical thought. Improved tactics made better use of the aircraft's speed and power, as well as its radar and missile systems. One of the air crews which had benefited from Top Gun training were Lieutenants Randy Cunningham and his radar intercept officer, Willie Driscoll. In January 1972, Cunningham took advantage of the training that had exposed him to more than 150 realistic ACM engagements when he shot down a North Vietnamese MiG-21. This was the first kill in nearly 2 years, and there would be many more. Graduates of Top Gun shot down MiG after MiG. Cunningham's own squadron, VF-96, scored a record 8 kills. And Cunningham and Driscoll became the first aces of the war after shooting down 3 MiGs on 10 May 1972. By the time American forces had left the Vietnam War zone, Navy fighter pilots had scored 25 times and suffered only 2 losses. Their kill-loss ratio of 12-to-1 was far superior to the Air Force's figure of 2-to-1. The Navy investment on dissimilar air combat training and Top Gun had proved itself beyond a doubt. Success in Vietnam spurred expansion of the Navy's dissimilar ACM training program. Top Gun's first adversary aircraft was the Skyhawk, which was used to simulate the MiG-17 on account of its similar size and performance. For 3 years, an offshoot of Navy Training Squadron VF-121, Top Gun was formally established and became an independent command in 1972. Several of the Vietnam MiG killers became highly successful instructors, including Cunningham and Driscoll.
The reason we use the Northrop F5 in the Top Gun course of instruction is that it's a pretty fair simulator of the Soviet MiG-21, which is one of the most widely exported aircraft in the world today. We teach the people to beat this aircraft so that they can go with confidence out into the fleet, knowing that they can beat the MiG-21. An additional factor is that the pilots at Top Gun flying this airplane are probably among the best adversary or fighter pilots in the world. So the fact that they can beat a Top Gun pilot in this aircraft is a confidence builder to them that they can beat a MiG-21 no matter who's flying.
In essence, this is what Top Gun's training aims to achieve: to build the confidence and ACM ability of regular squadron pilots, and not just an elite. Combat aircraft fly within defined parameters during regular peacetime operations. But during ACM, these aircraft are flown to their very limits. However, air combat skills are perishable and must be honed constantly.
The ability to fly airplanes, especially in a tactical arena, is not something. It's not like riding a bicycle. It's not something you can stop for 5 years, get back on, and still be proficient at it. That's one of the reasons that we stress pilot proficiency and pilot currency. We can't fly ACM unless we've flown ACM in the last 7 days. Because it's a dangerous arena, we want to make sure that the accident rate is kept low so that we can indeed employ the airplanes to the edges of its envelope. The scenario during a Top Gun flight is not competitive in nature. Both aircrew will fly their aircraft to the limit, but the main objective is a teaching situation. You have to build confidence, first of all, in your abilities to fly the aircraft, your own aircraft, to its limits, and secondly, to fly your airplane against another well-flown aircraft. And that's what we do here at Top Gun. Exploit the strengths of our airplanes and the weaknesses of their aircraft.
And in the Tomcat, U.S. Navy pilots fly a fighter which is not only the world's best long-range interceptor, but also a mean dogfighter.
You always do squeeze the trigger, even in practice. So when they actually put a missile on there, you're going to do exactly the same thing, except this time when you squeeze the trigger, it's going to come off.
The high value of Top Gun's training has been underlined by successes during subsequent air combat clashes after Vietnam. On the 4th of January, 1989, 2 Tomcats from the carrier John F. Kennedy were patrolling over the Gulf of Sidra. The Tomcats were shadowed by 2 Libyan MiG-23s, which ignored 4 avoidance maneuvers by the Navy fighters. From Kennedy came the transmission, "Warning yellow, weapons hold." Under the rules of engagement, this meant you must employ your weapons if threatened. Both MiGs were shot down. Like the encounter against Sukhoi fighters in 1981, it had been another mismatch. The A4 and F5 were excellent threat simulators for older generation MiGs, but by the mid-1980s it became clear that Top Gun would need a new adversary aircraft to replicate the next generation of Soviet fighters. This arrived in the form of the F-16N Fighting Falcon. The hectic Miramar base fully deserved its title, Fighter Town, USA, as dozens of hops were made daily by instructors flying these 3 adversary aircraft, as well as Tomcats flown by Top Gun students. The Navy ordered 26 F-16Ns, which entered service with Top Gun and 2 other dedicated Navy adversary squadrons in April of 1987. The aircraft is basically a version of the Air Force's F-16C fighter, but one which has been stripped of its cannon and defensive electronics, and which carries a lighter radar. This combination of low weight, allied to a very powerful General Electric engine, makes the F-16N the highest performing and most maneuverable version of the F-16 yet built, as well as the ultimate adversary aircraft. In service, it is used to simulate a wide range of aircraft, but its up-to-date radar and avionics systems, as well as its maneuverability, make it an ideal simulator for the MiG-29. Debriefing of pilots after air combat training is just as vital as the actual flight itself. Top Gun uses a system known as TACTS, Tactical Aircrew Combat Training System. This is an electronic ACM debriefing system which can track up to 36 aircraft, simulate missile launches, and record all maneuvers for pilots to learn from their mistakes. After instructing a Top Gun, Randy Cunningham rose to command an aggressor squadron. He highlights the value of TACTS. The 1980s had seen a sharp expansion in the Navy's ACM training. But following the end of the Cold War in the early 1990s, the U.S. defense budget was drastically reduced. The U.S. Navy was forced to take a cold, hard look at its adversary program and make several major changes. Top Gun is now based at Naval Air Station Fallon in the Nevada desert. By 1993, Top Gun had transitioned fully to the Tomcat and Hornet to fulfill its adversary training needs. And these are the two main types in service at Fallon, along with small numbers of F-5s. Most aircraft wear camouflage schemes similar to those of potentially hostile nations. Recently, all U.S. Navy aviation training has been restructured. Coincident with the move from Miramar to Fallon in early 1996 came the disestablishment of Top Gun. Its traditions and aims are now maintained by the Naval Strike and Air Weapons Center, which combines Top Gun with the former Strike University. This is destined to be the heart of Navy combat training into the 21st century. Naval aviators fly true multi-role warplanes, such as the Hornet, which are able to act as fighters and carry out a strike role in the same mission. For over 2 decades, Tomcats were flown exclusively as interceptors. But recently, even they have been given some measure of multi-role capability. Their aircrew now trained to fly air-to-ground missions as well, carrying mainly dumb or unguided bombs. Training at Fallon now integrates all Navy aircraft performing specific roles, from attack to electronic warfare, command and control, and fighter. Top Gun lives on at Fallon. The kind of training in dissimilar air combat maneuvering it mastered for over 2 decades and taught to the best of the best will ensure that U.S. Navy aircrew will remain able to respond to aerial challenges from hostile powers anytime and anywhere in the world.